Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here. Yes, I'm late today. I'm 3 minutes late. I apologize. I was getting some other things ready, answering some Q&A on something else here, and it's okay. Let's get this party started. First off, hold on. I gotta get some music going. Gotta get some things set up, adjust my chair, get comfy. I should have poured out a drink. That would have made it better. It's all good, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everyone is doing well on this Friday, maybe your Saturday, whatever time it may be, whatever place you may be coming from. Maybe you're getting ready to go out for the night. Maybe you're having dinner and you're listening to me. I'm sorry to hear that. Maybe you're out partying already, or maybe you're just watching the charts. Anyway, thanks for being here, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate having you each and every time. And if you didn't already, hit that like button. Let others know that we are here, that we are live and ready to go. And speaking of which, hold on, let me let some other folks here know that we're going live. I'm live. Okay, we're good. So, man, Storm, man, that's an interesting project, right? It's kind of the whole crowdsourcing thing, kind of like Fiverr. Storm, really? That's pretty interesting. So, good morning from Australia. My Aussie friends are in the house. I've gotta say, there's a lot of folks from Australia on this channel very often, and I think I gotta get out there. That's it. That's the only logical conclusion here is I need to get out there. I need to go and hang out with you guys, do a little bit of a crypto meetup or something. That'd be fun. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get going. I'm going to talk charts. I'm going to talk news. And before I get going, I don't shill a whole lot. I do from time to time, but nodeinvestor.com is where you can find me. You can get me out on Twitter at nodeinvestor. And most importantly, go to nodeinvestor.com/training if you want to learn a little bit more about the technical analysis, the charts. I am going to be revamping this page, so this will be looking a little different later. It's going to be having a lot more on here. I'm introducing some more advanced training and some webinars/seminars, and a little bit more for a lot of you guys already know some of the basics around technical analysis and all that. And you guys want more, you want some more specific trading systems and all that fun stuff. And so it's in work, and appreciate you guys being here. So nodeinvestor.com. You can also sign up for my free newsletter there at the homepage. Join the Node Insiders at Node Investor. So how long will this stream go for? I will be going for about an hour. So I'm going to try to move fast through this first portion, and then I will leave time to get through as many charts as you guys want to go through. Neblio, man, that was on my radar all week, and finally, so let's do it. An all-nighter. Yeah, I don't know about that. So some news here. Edward Snowden apparently is not a big fan of Bitcoin. And, he has a good point. It's not as anonymous as private as initially were said to be. Now, it can be if you can find a way to get an address anonymously and all that fun stuff. But there was some other news recently talking about how the NSA has been tracking Bitcoin folks and all that. And I mentioned that in my last stream. And so this is kind of just follow up to that. And, he said the whole public ledger is the biggest flaw. And, it's a two-edged sword, right? It's public, but it also has lacking some privacy stuff. And we have other products and other ways to do that. But interesting that he's been talking a lot about Bitcoin and crypto here in recent news. So Japan, Yahoo is going to be launching an exchange. And so if you know anything about Yahoo, man, Yahoo blew up, it was sold off, different pieces, all that fun stuff. Yahoo is not the Yahoo it used to be. They were kind of going downhill anyway. But so this is, I don't know if this is even really big news, to be honest with you. I mean, we have tons of exchanges already. And yeah, the name Yahoo is big. But is it going to really be an exchange that people are going to flock to and all that fun stuff? I mean, Japan is certainly one of the leaders in terms of volume, but we'll see. But this is certainly making the rounds. And keep in mind, this is kind of a ways out still. So April of 2019. Got a long wait, especially in crypto world. April of 2019, that's like 10 years from now. But hey, that made the news today. And let's see here. I think that's it. That's all I really wanted to cover. But before we get to the crypto space, I want to throw this out for you guys. Do you want me to start including more stock market, other market stuff? Because I do invest and trade in other markets. Now I'm primarily crypto these days, but I do keep my hands in some of the other markets. Lately I've been a little bit more active, like shorting the stock market and buying some other stuff. But if you guys want, I will cover that from time to time. Maybe I'll dedicate separate videos to that and not mix up the two markets. So no stocks, yes stocks, maybe mix is good, okay? And so I figured it would probably be mixed, but if most of you guys say no, then I'll say, okay, we will not talk stocks most of the time. But let me see here. I think I might have to just cover some charts here real quick. Anyway, gonna have to talk stocks very briefly, and then we'll get to the, and this will help you guys. This will help you. And so this is what I wanted to talk about. So looking at the stock market, it's making the news. It's been ugly. It's been trashed. Here's the charts of the daily Dow Jones Industrial Average. Let me clear this here. Just nasty looking. I mean, look at this thing. We had that big fall a couple of weeks ago. And, you know, this was when the VIX blew up and there was some other things there. Then we rallied. And during that rally, I saw this big double top coming, and I was thinking this is going to be a great short opportunity. You can see here's the S&P 500. Here's the NASDAQ actually went higher, made for a much better short opportunity. And sure enough, went that route via a couple of different venues. You can buy put options. You can go straight short. I actually did a couple of things, but I also shorted some specific ETFs, such as the XLK and the XLF, which are just very weak right now. And I'm kind of wondering if I should cover my short now, but certainly in the profit now, these are looking very nice. But here's the thing I wanted to point you guys out to. And it works in all markets, right? So you had this double top, right? And you had a higher high here. But look at the, this was the initial warning, right? The big sell volume off the top, right? Just massive reversal off the top. That's a big red flag. And then the second run up, you had this big bearish divergence on the RSI, right? So, and so many of the charts look that way. And when you see a chart like that, especially after a big run up, you got to remember the stock market had a huge run last year. It was like up 40% or something. That's just a big warning flag, right? You just got to pay attention to that. Regardless of the market, stocks, crypto, Bitcoin, anything, if you start to see these kind of setups after a huge run, then it's kind of like, hey, heads up. You should be on high alert. Maybe a reversal is coming. And sure enough, we're seeing it and just got smacked. And so interesting to see if this spills over into any of the other marketplaces. So far, hasn't really had a direct impact in the crypto space. And I know sometimes you guys ask me, hey, is the stock market going to impact, you know, if it goes up or down, if it crashes? And right now, there hasn't been a whole lot of correlation there. But man, not looking pretty over there on that side of the house. So let's get to it. Bitcoin. Here's what I've been looking at on the BTC. So there's this longer, lower trend starting to develop here. And, you know, in the big scheme of things, we had this huge run up. And look how volatile it was all the way down. And it's kind of been a little quiet here. I mean, relatively speaking. I know most of us that watch the charts, we see the wiggles here at the 4-hour level, and we're just like, man, this is all over the place. I mean, just do something, Bitcoin. But when you zoom out and you look at the daily picture, it's kind of getting really narrow, really tight here. And, you know, let me take this off here. I mean, there's a couple of things that I'm watching here, right? You still have this big downtrend that's very much in place still. But it's gonna, if this lower trend holds here, right, we're gonna hit a little bit of a juncture here potentially on two key trends, right? You got this support trend that's maybe being established here, and you've got this clear downtrend that has so far been an area of resistance. And this thing resolves itself one way or the other by the first week of April. And so that's going to be something to be watching here. It's going to be interesting to see if we start to see some volume and some big percent moves come out after this. But right now, I mean, we've had a pretty decent bounce off the lows, but it just, when you look at it in the big picture, right, that big move we had 3 days ago, it's kind of like, man, that's tiny relative to everything we've seen. And I mean, it's true, right? When you think about, we went from 7,300 to 9K, like, in the big scheme of things, that's not that much, but it really was. I mean, and you look at the alts, and it made for some good trading opportunities. But keep an eye on this broader double trend line that's kind of starting to coincide here. This is going to be important to watch here in the next week or so. So people are asking me, am I bullish? Am I bearish? I'm a little bit neutral right now. I mean, that's really it. I'm more bullish on the altcoins, and I've been trading them, and they've been running very nicely. And we'll look at some of those right now. On Bitcoin, it's kind of like, I bought a little bit off the lows here. I've been trading, in and out of this little cycle that we've had. Took some profits here. Took a shot yesterday, got stopped out, and right now it's just kind of forming an interesting pattern here. Let me hide these. Forming an interesting pattern here, right? And kind of tightening up, and which way is it going to go? It's getting a little bit of a flag, and there's some tight levels. But when you look at some of the other names, I mean, we're just seeing some very strong moves here, and you guys have already thrown out some names. We're seeing Binance have a pretty decent run. We're seeing Neblio having a pretty decent run here. And so in the alt side of things, that seems to be where most of the fun has been lately in the last couple of days. Here's Tron starting to move higher again. We saw, obviously, everybody saw ICX and the news around that, and that was just a massive move there. But, across the board, there's just been a lot more action and activity to be had on the altcoin side, and Bitcoin's kind of just been sitting there. Not sitting there, but, relatively speaking, it's not doing this kind of stuff. And sometimes that's good. And we've seen that in the past where when Bitcoin's trending, either the alts are keeping up or they're falling behind. And when Bitcoin goes sideways, it's like you get a little altcoin party. And so we're starting to see that. But it's not across the board. And I've been talking about that. It's mostly the middle tier and smaller cap names. If you look at some of the bigger cap names like ETH and Ripple and Dash, I mean, they're certainly not doing anything like that. I mean, here is the ETH BTC pair. Not looking very exciting here. And you look at some of the other names, right? So it's certainly mixed. It's not an across the board, all altcoins are just running crazy, right? It's definitely very mixed. And so because of that, you got to stay cautious still. The market certainly hasn't confirmed that it's in a low, that we've hit a low. We're kind of seeing a pretty good counter trend rally at this point. But across the board, the market hasn't confirmed that it's hit the low. So if you go to the coin market cap, $332 billion, kind of hanging out in that range here. And again, it's a mixed bag. Not a lot of huge number changes in the top 10 list, but as you start to go down the list, Veritasium 81%. What the heck happened there? But we saw Verge pump yesterday, big number. Binance is having a good run. Icon had a good run, and you're seeing some of these names down further in the list that are having a very big run. Storm, oh my goodness, up 134%. Storm, and so you have a lot of these names. And some of them are just like totally random pumps. Like we've seen Bitcoin dark pump in the past and just other stuff, but we'll get to those. And so definitely not across the board. Going into the weekend, if you didn't catch my video earlier, let me go back to BTC and I'll cover some key points to be watching here, and then we'll hit to the alts here. So going back to BTC, this is Bitcoin 1 hour on the Bitstamp chart. So it's very granular of a look. I was talking about initially this 8,600 level was kind of the first support level I wanted it to hold. Clearly we did not hold that, and then below that was like that 83, 8,400 level or so, and that was the level that so far we're seeing a little bit of support come in. And so between those two was kind of the quote unquote buy zone if you were going to buy the dip, with the stop point being just below this, because if it breaks that, then I'm looking at 8K is kind of the next point of maybe support, psychological, and that's where, if it does break, I'd like to see that hold, because then that would maintain this higher low pattern that we're starting to form. But near term, this was kind of a little bit of a buy zone. We're seeing some pretty decent action come in, but it still hasn't been able to break above this 87, 8,800 mark right now. We tried a few times yesterday, had a pretty big pullback, and on volume too, right? I mean, it's not like they're small selling bars. I mean, this reversal off the top, that look at all the volume that showed up there. Down here at the lows, you saw some pretty decent volume. So from that perspective, you got to be a little bit cautious there. That certainly the bulls are not in control when it comes to the BTC trend, but like I said, zoom out a little bit. It's a little bit more of a kind of a sideways action that we're seeing here. This downtrend, right? We're kind of just bouncing from here, and now we're in this test, right? We had this big bounce that was following this big downtrend we saw for a couple of weeks. This bounce is the test. How far does it pull back? If it starts to hold around here and then starts to go higher, and obviously we won't see confirmation of that until we actually clear this 9,200 mark. But if it holds here and starts to go higher, then things are going to start looking a lot more positive, because it's going to show that, hey, this trend is starting to form here. We're starting to make higher lows now, and we're turning the corner. And so the other thing I wanted to point out too is this potential inverted head and shoulders pattern. Let me go to the daily. That is trying to form here on BTC. I'll close out the volume there, and maybe that'll be easier to see here. But this is what I was looking at here, and it's not confirmed yet, but got to always be watching for the potential patterns that may be forming. And so here's what I'm looking at is this, and we may be in the middle of our right shoulder, right? Where it bottoms out is anyone's guess if this pattern forms out. And maybe that was the bottom of the pattern, right? We've yet to see it. We're in the middle of the pattern forming, but this is what I'm going to be watching here over the next couple of days is, do we see this play out, right? Do we see maybe 8K hold, and then we start to rally and break this neckline, and then ultimate confirmation will be getting above that 9,200 zone, especially if there's volume coming in, then that'd be positive, because at the lows, that's what you want to look for is reversal patterns. But yes, this is certainly much more diagonal than I would like to see. So it's not a real strong inverted head and shoulder, definitely. But that's just something that's potentially playing out, something you got to watch here. So if we break lower, then obviously the lows that we formed here are going to be very much watched, because if that breaks, that's just going to be real negative. And I'm not so sure. I mean, that 6K washout, that's the bottom. But I mean, if that's if we break below this, do we go all the way back down and try to test that and make a huge double bottom? That's kind of what everyone's waiting to find out. But near term, those are the levels I'm watching, at least kind of going into the weekend, looking for those two. If we start to see 92, 9,300, that's going to look a lot better now. So let's see here. Yeah, and you're right. On the 4-hour, there's definitely a head and shoulder potentially forming here, especially if we can't break above 88, 8,900, then that's not going to be a pretty picture. And so what you guys are looking at here is this forming here, and now we're trying to rally. And if it starts to do one of these, then that's the pattern to be watching, with your neckline, around that $8,300 mark or so. And so that's going to be it. I think if Bitcoin does form this head and shoulder in the 4-hour and it breaks below, the alts will follow suit. So even though I'm bullish on the alts right now, you still got to watch BTC, because if this does play out, it just leads the market, and it will certainly impact most other names, if not all of them. So definitely got to be mindful of that type of action there. All right, let's get to some of the big names a little bit more in depth. I won't go down the entire coin market cap list. I'm going to skip around, kind of cherry pick a few names that I want to point out to you guys, and then we will start going through some of the names that you want to. But I'm going to cover some of the biggies first. And so going to ETH, continues to be the weak one. Unfortunately, just not looking pretty good for ETH, especially ETH BTC. One thing I was watching here is this pattern, kind of this descending triangle pattern, bear flag pattern. It's not even a bear flag, it's more of a bear pennant, right? Bear flags tend to go up. But you had this big break lower and just could not muster a rally versus BTC. This trend line started to form. It was holding support. And a couple of days ago, it was kind of one of those, excuse me, it was kind of one of those next move wins. And I was really hoping it would have broke below, and it's just really starting to drift lower. This trend line is continuing to act as a area of resistance. But one thing to watch here, though, is just how oversold it is versus BTC, right? I mean, the RSI is here at 21. it's pretty stretched to the downside, even on the daily chart versus the 10 EMA. I mean, it's already down, 7% versus the 10 EMA. And you almost would expect a little bit of a counter trend rally, but even just, I mean, it just can't seem to muster that. So ETH is definitely one of the weakest ones, but I'm kind of watching it here because I'm thinking maybe we see a little bit of a relief rally, even if it just bounces into resistance, would be a pretty decent bounce. On the USD pair, 529, trying to hold this support level right now on the USD pair. If it breaks below, much below 520, not going to be good. So this thing has got to have to move sooner rather than later. Litecoin, not as bad and relatively just kind of holding par with BTC here. You can see the last 5 days or so, it's just been going flat. So the chart on the USD pair is basically going to look what Bitcoin looks like, right? We had the big rally off the low and this pullback that's taking place right now. Let me put the volume back on there. And you can see here, the good news is rally off the low. The pullback so far has been on lower and lower volume. And with this most recent day not done yet, about 3 hours left in the current daily bar. But if it finishes this way, that's actually going to look pretty positive. It'll set up for a nice reversal higher, and that would also take us back above that 10 EMA. So this is going to be interesting to watch here on Litecoin. The key would be getting back above that 170 mark or so, and going from there. So Litecoin's not looking too bad. Excuse me. Let me take a drink here. It's a clean drink. Don't worry. It's still too early. It's only 2:30, 3 o'clock here. So, all right. So we covered BTC. We covered Litecoin. Let's go to EOS. And if I skip one of the names that you guys want to cover, we'll come back to it. We'll definitely cycle back and look at some of the charts you guys want to look at. So EOS, this is what I'm watching here on EOS. Going to the 1 hour. This is building a little bit of an ascending triangle. I really would have liked for this first high to be at the same level as these current peaks. That would have made for a much cleaner pattern. But nonetheless, you can see the trend on the lower end is forming with a series of higher lows. And so now this pattern is starting to really tighten up here on the 1 hour. And so it's kind of interesting to see if this plays out here over the next day or so. And so I'm still liking the way this is looking. It's looking pretty strong here. We had this big move higher reversal there off the top, but got to pay attention to EOS, BTC. Let's look at EOS USD here. You can see this is also forming a little bit of an equilibrium pattern, holding the support level, which was the prior breakout point. And so here's the thing to look at on EOS, right? We had this little bit of an ascending triangle pattern here that broke out on the hourlies. And then it broke out, and we've seen this breakout point tested a couple of times now. But this now is forming a little bit of its own pattern here. And so watching this one higher kind of correlates with the BTC pair. If it breaks out of the BTC pair, then I'm thinking this USD side is going to have a pretty decent move. And so keep an eye on this one here. It's kind of equilibrium pattern here, not confirming one way or the other just yet, but all around looking pretty good. If you look at the daily chart, coming off the lows pretty decently, seeing some good supporting volume coming in. And right now it just feels like a pretty good consolidation right below that resistance point, which makes sense that it would pause right here. You can see this was a floor. It held there, held there, held there. And then when it finally broke, a rally into that tends to be the place where you see first resistance kind of pausing there. So EOS all around still looking pretty good. Let's see here. I will get back to some of these. Let's talk some of the big movers for today here. So Icon. No, you're starting to attract the weird side of YouTube. I don't know if I'm starting to, man. You guys have been pretty interesting from day one. So this is not a new phenomenon. All right, so let's see here. Icon. So Icon, we all know I had that very strong move off the lows. In my video today, I mentioned potential bearish divergence. I know nobody wanted to hear that because everybody loves this coin right now and it's moving very strong. I love this coin right now, okay? But I was just saying the daily chart still looks fine. It looks absolutely fine here. I mean, it's had a very strong move. It just needs a little bit of a pause. The shorter term chart's the only thing I was worried about here, mainly because we had that big move higher. You can see the RSI was really starting to lose some momentum here. And usually that's a little bit of a sign that this thing's due for a pause or maybe a pullback. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to crash and just collapse from here. But I personally would welcome a pullback. I think it needs it. And so we're seeing that as the price moves higher. And so just got to keep an eye on that. You might see a little bit of profit taking. Now, granted, this has been a little bit news driven here lately. And so if we see more announcements and more of that fun stuff, then all bets are off. You could see another rally here. But personally, I'd like to see it just kind of hold up here and pause and give us another bit of a base. And long term, I'm a big fan of Icon. I think it's going to continue to do very well. The fact that it's broken this broader downtrend that's been in play for a long time is very positive, and it broke it on good volume. I mean, just big, strong volume. So long term, I'm not concerned here. Just very short term, very near term. I think maybe we get a little bit of a pause. Hopefully, maybe that's it. Maybe that was a pause and it goes higher. But I'm betting on a little bit more. So, but all in all, it's still looking pretty good. Neblio, just because it's been moving here in the last couple of hours. But look at Neblio. So I was watching Neblio build this really tight base here. Just kind of was in a range. Let me clear some of these lines so it doesn't look too messy here for you guys. But this horizontal range that it was in, and I was actually watching the lower pattern here, right? So it just kind of sitting tight here for a long time, for a couple of days. You can see the accumulation was really starting to build up on this one. A lot of buy volume was coming in, and then just boom, finally broke above. And when they break, they move fast, especially a name like Neblio. It's been known to move pretty quickly. And you can see once that breakout happened, it was up 20% pretty quick. Pulling in a little bit, it definitely got way overheated in the very short term, just moving up that fast. But zooming out, looking at that daily chart, that's a very nice move, clearing the downtrend, clearing some near-term resistance that it was hitting and continuing to lose ground on. So looking pretty good, looking like it's trying to turn the corner here. And I'm expecting a little bit more upside momentum after this little bit of a pause that we're seeing right now plays out. So it looks like it's just consolidating, pausing some of that move. But the volume there, you got to love that. So Neblio, it's still looking pretty good. Maybe a little bit of a bull flag forms here on that 30-minute and sets up a good secondary entry point. But like a Neblio, Binance. So Binance, mentioned this one here in the video this morning too. I was watching it. I think at the video time it was like $10 or a little bit above $10 here. And so it's still going higher, moving out of range. But you can see here, it's hitting a little bit of a resistance point on the daily chart. But I think that's really good because this is the big test, right? This is kind of the key that I'm watching here. You can see it's been forming this big base here at the lows around that $7 to $9 range. Finally seeing it come in. The first big pop we saw here was a couple weeks ago when they announced news of a DEX coming later, and then now with all the news, right, it's Japan, and then they're moving, and it's just been in the news a lot lately with the phishing scam and all in all. But they've all around proven to be very, very open, very clear, and really a good exchange, right? They're the leading exchange for a reason, and so it's looking pretty good. But the chart is still looking positive on this daily chart. I'm going to be watching this. If it breaks above $12 here, then you can really see the momentum pick up on this guy. But just very strong action here today. So still liking this one here. Looks like it's pausing right there. Makes sense to see a little bit of pause. Maybe we get a little bit of a secondary entry pullback, and then it breaks through the $12 market. It needs to cool off a little bit. The RSI kind of got a little overheated. So this thing can drift a little bit lower, go sideways for a few hours, and then break through. Would make for a much stronger, much more sustainable rally on the second leg up. So that's what I'm watching there here. Let me go through some of these here. Yep, Storm. Bcash, we'll talk Bitcoin Cash, Cardano, Populous. All right, cool. So thanks for joining. For those of you that got here late, hit that like button. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for having you. All right, let's go. Where was the other one I was going to cover here? So Tron, you guys watching Tron here? Tron moving pretty good. Now Tron is one I like to trade and not necessarily hold long term. I'm still not one of those long term believers in Tron. Do you guys like Tron long term? I don't know. It makes for some good trades though, I got to say, because this thing, when it moves, man, I mean, look at this move here. That was like 40% or, that's 20 some percent off the low. So it tends to have these pretty decent pumps, but now we're seeing a little bit more of a stronger leg up here. And so this one's looking pretty good from a near term perspective. And so full disclosure, I do have a position on this trading position, but here's the way you watch these, right? You have this initial run, and I've traded this twice here in the last week, right? I had this initial run and took some profits going into this this little run up here. And then you can see that was a pretty clear signal, right? The high volume reversal near the top, at least marked the temporary top. And then as it started to pull back, I was watching the support level, which is this blue line right here, and waiting for that up in, and it was, and that's when I took my second position here. And so going into that candle right there, big volume coming in as it breaks resistance. And this was actually a little bit of a fake out, but I held, didn't hit my stop. So it kind of went up. Then it kind of gave us that little bit of a pullback as BTC pulled in here overnight. And here we are moving higher. So pretty nice to see some of these play out pretty good like that. So a little bit of a overdone here near term. So maybe it's time for banking some of those profits here. It's kind of going high here. But on the daily chart, still has some room to run. So if this thing wants to keep going, then that 480 is the next level that I'm watching in and around there. And then above that, kind of above that 500 mark. And we'll see from there. So Tron, not too bad. Quantum, yeah, I'm liking Quantum here. So let's go to Quantum. Quantum. So Quantum's still forming a nice little flag, little bit of a bull flag here coming in on this pullback, good secondary entry. So I had that big run earlier this week. And remember I was talking about, this is Quantum USD, and I'll go to the BTC chart, but see this downtrend line, right? That was right where this rally paused. And so some of you guys always ask, do you use BTC pairs or do you use USD? Usually I'm looking at the BTC charts, but sometimes you got to look at the USD chart because the pattern sometimes is a little clearer there, a little bit easier to see, and they both help in some ways, right? Sometimes, especially when they trade a USD pair, then it makes some sense to use them because you get some traders that are in and out of USD only versus going into BTC and then trading into an alt and back and forth. And so I'll do those, especially for the bigger names that trade USD pairs. But look at where this one ran up to. And what it's doing now is actually very positive. Had that big volume run up. It's pulling in right now, right to the moving average. Volume has been pretty clean on this, not huge sell volume, right? It's not too bad, kind of just drifting lower. And what you want to look for next is a reversal higher on some pretty decent buy volume, breaking that trend. That'd be very positive, especially for the longer term picture, right? Kind of really starts to paint the change in trend a lot better, because at this point it's not yet confirmed that it's a trend change, right? It's more of a bounce into resistance, and if it can't break that resistance, then that's it, right? It's done, right? So that's how you look at that. But right now it's looking very positive. If you go to the shorter term time frame, you can see the early entry would actually be a break above this declining trend line here in the very short term. And so you don't have to wait for that upper bound to be broken. If the volume starts coming in and it clears that 1920 or so, then I'm going to be taking a look at that. But it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out over the next few hours. People laugh at Tron because of the CEO. I would agree. I mean, that's yeah, I would agree. All right, let's see here. So we covered Quantum USD, Quantum BTC. Not a lot of difference, right? You had that huge run, nice little pullback on some very constructive, relatively low selling volume, and it's just a matter of how, where do we find the low on this pullback? Let me do a quick fib on this here. How's that looking? It's kind of right at that 3.2 level. So see if it holds right now. It'd be interesting to see if this one can hold and then start moving higher. But all around, I'm liking the way this one's setting up. We just got to see some confirmation now. Neo, checking out the Neo. Poor Neo. Neo is not looking as strong as I would have liked here. I say poor Neo like it's, but Neo is like just it had that run. It's just very much acting like BTC, maybe even a little weaker. If you look at the BTC pair of Neo, You can see it's just been lagging here, right? It basically just bounced. That's it. It was a big bounce into that 10 EMA, almost exactly, and just pulling back right now. Not looking strong, not looking like some of these other names we're watching, right? It's just been in a little bit of a downtrend, and I had some bad news here, some FUD around the nodes and the blockchain, and just it was just kind of drifting lower. And once it broke this support here, just really started to accelerate lower. And so far, just not looking really strong here. The USD pair, right, the near-term support that I was watching was that 120 mark. Broke that, formed a little bit of a double top, and just kind of heading lower. But I'm thinking this was a pretty good low on NEO. That big washout we had over the weekend when NEO went sub $50. So I'm thinking that was a pretty good low. NEO's not dead. I'm a big believer in NEO still, but just near term, right? It's just not acting as strong as some of these others. Gave us a pretty nice little bounce, a nice little tradable bounce, but that was it so far. See here. So we covered. Let's take a look at Stellar. Stellar Lumens. So looking at the Stellar, not too bad here on the USD, kind of just a similar pattern here, but I'm watching this, right? I'm kind of watching to see if this thing can break out of this little parallel trend that it's in right now and start moving higher, especially some volume starts coming in. If you look at Stellar BTC, real similar pair, real similar pattern there on this pair, just kind of the big pullback that's happening right now, but you don't want to get too much deeper than this, right? If this is going to be a valid kind of secondary higher low, this is about where you want it to end. If it starts to get too low, then that's just going to really accelerate selling to the downside. So it's about where you want it to end. The RSI is sitting around 40. When something starts getting into bull mode, the 40s, high 30s is kind of the new floor on the RSI, and that's what I watch. And vice versa, when something's in bear mode, the 60 is kind of the wall, right, where RSI just can't get above that 60 generally. You can see it happened here, and it tends to dip much lower on the lows. And so here you can see it clearly went above that 60, pulling in, maybe it holds at 40, and ultimately we want to see that thing take out the RSI and go a little bit higher. So not too bad. Not too bad. The death cross. Oh man, the death cross. Is that happening? Has it happened yet? Zcash. I'm liking the Zcash here. Liking the way this is forming a nice higher low. Volume starting to come in on the second half right here. You can see a pretty decent little bottom putting in right there. Again, RSI bottomed right around 38, 40. So looking pretty good. This is Zcash USD, but still not confirmed in the big picture, right? It's kind of still, it's just bouncing right now off this big downtrend, but this is looking positive. If this holds and we can break above that 270, 265 area or so, then that's pretty good confirmation. But I like the volume that came in right at the lows here. And Zcash, man, Zcash, this thing was $800. Went all the way to 204, 203 on that washout weekend last weekend. And so, man, probably a good value play. I don't know. Let's see here. Why no death cross? I don't know. It might be death cross. So if you guys, most of you guys have seen it. If you haven't, go to my channel. I did a video on the death cross, talking about it, what it is, what it isn't, and what I'm doing about it, which is nothing. And so, but it's, I'm just throwing that out for you guys, for those of you that are wondering, because you're going to hear more people talking about the death cross and all that fun stuff. But from a trading perspective, even from an investing perspective, it's not going to influence my strategy one bit. The 50-day and the 200-day crossing, it's kind of just a really lagging indicator that just gets a lot of attention. So not really something that I'm going to be acting upon. Verge. So Verge had that pump yesterday. Big volume spike came in, gave you a little bit of a secondary entry, trying to rally, can't really break above, but I'm thinking it's going to go higher. It looks like it wants to go higher. If you look at the hourlies, this is kind of setting up, but it needs to clear. That's it needs to close above this little point here, and you'll really start to see some more momentum pick up on this one. But Verge, man, big move off the low. And I know there was some news and a tweet and all that fun stuff, but still, big news off the low after forming a pretty decent little bit of a bottom here. So Burge, good trading. Even if you don't want to hold it long term, good trading. All right, let's see here. 0x is another one I've been watching here. And so a couple of things to note on the 0x. This thing is coming off the lows pretty decently, had a nice move higher, and now I'm watching to see where this pullback finishes out. So one thing to pay attention to here, this is the 0x dollar pair. It's sitting right at below or right around that 382 fib level, the first fib level. But if you go to the BTC pair, let's pull in a little bit more. Let's do a quick analysis on this guy here. So here we go. 0x. You can see it's kind of undercut, bouncing a little bit. So I'm still waiting for this downtrend to finish playing out. But it's one I like longer term. Real interesting project. You know, the whole peer-to-peer exchange, kind of needed in my opinion. Pretty good team. They got a good team on here. So something that I'd be watching here is a potential bottom for the longer term picture on 0x. Can you share your thoughts on Genesis Vision? Okay, so the coin is really rallying right now, and it's having a big move. No, I'm thinking of another one. Genesis Vision, never mind. I'm not going to talk about Genesis Vision because I'm not educated on that one. I was thinking of the other one. All right, let's see here. Neblio. So we covered Neblio, and I think Neblio is, you know, I've been watching it for a couple of days here, finally broke out. Looks like it wants to go higher, in my opinion. Just look for a little bit of a secondary entry, a little bit of a pause. You're probably getting that now, and volume is drying up on this, and I think Neblio is going higher. So let's go to some of these others here. I'm going to go over to the screen here on CoinGee. And so you guys wanted to see Bitcoin Cash. I'll cover that here. Something to note on Bitcoin Cash, actually. If you like Bitcoin Cash, this is going to be good news. So looking at the Bitcoin Cash USD pair, and they keep Bittrex needs to just change this to BCH already and not put it as BCC. But anyway, thing to note on Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin Cash USD is basically pulled right back into this old breakout point, this prior resistance here around that $800 mark, right? And had that big pullback, had the breakout, pulled back, and we saw that rally, you know, last year that took it to almost 4K. And since then, it's pretty much given it all back, retraced this entire move. But twice here in recent times, right? During the February washout, 800 was the floor. Then it's rallied and it's pulling right back to that zone again and trying to base out here. So if it can hold this level, this is one to be watching here as a potential reversal here. And, you know, if you can even tighten that up here to the most recent bodies here, then that 860, 850 level, that's really going to be the floor to watch. Now, the thing is, it's got to break this downtrend. So it's a little bit of a critical juncture now because the lower trend or the declining trend, which is currently overhead resistance, is now coming very close to this lower trend. And if you just purely looked at the chart, you'd say this is a descending triangle and odds favor it's going to break lower. And I would agree with you, totally agree with you. So all I'm saying is it's at a critical juncture. And if it's going to hold this level, we're going to know here pretty soon. So keep an eye out for Bcash. If it starts breaking out and hitting that $1,000 mark again or 1,100 mark again, then maybe it wants to break above this downtrend here. So something to watch. But this one, I was noticing that earlier today. Versus BTC, it's definitely not looking as pretty. So we'll go to BCH here. On the BTC side on Bitfinex, you can see here it's just had this big downtrend, and so far it's just kind of going sideways and just really just keeping par with BTC at this point. Bitcoin Cash. All right, let's see. Cardano. So I took a little trade on this earlier this week, and I was waiting to see if it gave us a secondary entry. I'm still not back in it, but Cardano had this nice little run. I'm not liking how deep this is pulling in. It really needs to hold here soon and start turning the corner. I like Cardano longer term. This is just very short term that I'm talking here on the trading side of things. But one thing to note here on Cardano, where is it? So looking at the Fib retracement levels here on this guy, you can see here it's kind of in the middle here, just broke the 382 level. I was really hoping to see that one hold, and it just broke below that, so it's still heading lower. Just got to wait this one out here, but I'm thinking longer term, the low is probably in on Cardano. That's my opinion. I think it's made the low. If it goes lower, I mean, you're basically going to retrace and go back to the kind of the debut prices here on this thing, and so I'm thinking this is probably the low, big volume bounce off the low. If we make a higher low here, it's gonna be very positive, and it's really starting to turn the trend here. So longer term, I still like it here. I think it's pretty good value. Near term, as far as trading goes, I'm just going to be waiting to see if this breaks out of this trend. If it does, then I'll be looking to potentially trade that on the next leg up. All right, let me see here. Let me go through some of these comments. I've been reading them as I'm talking, keeping an eye on the comments here, but let me pause and backtrack through some of these. Yeah, Zill, man, Zill looking good too. Look at Zill. We'll look at, so we talked to Neo, we talked to Quantum, we talked, Decred. I haven't looked at that one a little bit. Petro. You want me to look at the Petro? All right. Okay, cool. You know what I didn't talk, and some of you guys are asking about, was gold and silver. I'll tell you what, just because this is a crypto show today, I will reserve that for the very end. And so you're going to have to wait about 20 more minutes, and then we'll talk some gold and some silver charts. All right. Let's go through some of these here. Omise go. So OMG BTC here. You know, it's certainly kind of losing some steam here, drifting lower, the downtrend. Once it had that failed breakout, just hasn't really been able to long-term recover much. And I was really liking this setup here. I mean, give you this nice little base and give you a fake breakout right here. And then it just totally reversed. And once it broke support, it was just no turning back. Now, granted, this happened right as BTC started its big pullback. So some of that definitely spilled over into this market here, but just hasn't had as big of a bounce as some of these other names that we're seeing. And you can see here in recent days, it's certainly been the laggard. I don't know why. I'm not sure of any news or anything that's driving this. If you guys do know, please let me know and post it out there. But at this point, certainly looking weaker, and the buy volume is not there. Most of the selling has been on the, or most of the volume has been on the sell side. So I'm just going to be waiting to see once this clears on the BTC side on the trend. Same thing with the USD pair, just kind of bouncing into these moving averages. You can see this one's hitting the wall at the 26 EMA, bounces there. And so until that changes, there's other names that are much stronger than this one right now. Longer term, I still have some OMG. So I'm still holding it. Not looking too bad here, but I want to see this thing finally turn. Is this the low? Could be. Maybe that big washout around $8 was the low, but we're going to have to make a pretty good second high here, higher low, before we say that was it. So have I missed BTC? Trade Devil? Yes, you have, but just for you and for the other 299 people on the call, I'm going to do it again. We'll do it towards the end, though. Zill. Oh, man. This one's looking pretty good here, too. So Zill had a very nice move, a very nice breakout. And what I like about this one is the chart history here is so young, relatively speaking, right? I mean, this thing only goes back to the first week of March. And during that time frame, this was really the level to be watching. This lower resistance level here is the breakout signal, right? I mean, that was the prior high. But when something starts to base and consolidate and it forms these lower highs, that's really the breakout point. And so this was the level I was watching. You can see Basically cleared that on some massive volume. We rallied, pulled right back to that point, and here it is, kind of pausing a little bit. But all in all, it's looking pretty good. Let's see if that's sustainable. As long as this level holds here on this yellow line around that 560 level, then it may set up a pretty good secondary entry here on this. But look at the volume there. I mean, you don't want to see a full reversal, but so far, big volume breakouts, looking pretty good. I'm liking the way it's looking. Smash that like button, ladies and gentlemen. Is this Superman's backup channel? No, it's not. Do I scream like him? Am I screaming? Good in cash. Same thing here. Very nice little bit of a breakout. It's just now edging out on very good volume. Look at that pattern. That's actually really positive here. I'm liking this. Had the low here, a little bit of a pullback, and then boom, busts right through that resistance here, pausing just right above the zone. So not bad. This one's looking pretty good on that 4-hour chart. Let's zoom in a little bit on the 1 hour, giving you a nice little secondary entry, a little bit of a pause flag forming here. This one looks like he wants to go higher. And cash, very nice. Here, I'm gonna have to make a note of this one. Thank you for pointing me to the in cash. I looked at that chart. In cash. Okay. How many things do I look for to accumulate? That's a good question. So are you talking about like accumulation patterns on the chart? There's a couple of things, right? Obviously, if it's in a downtrend, when it starts to go sideways and you want to, volume is the key. And I'm a big proponent of volume. And so when you start to see the small volume pullbacks and then the big volume spikes and kind of pause, big volume spikes, especially near the lows, it starts holding a support zone. That just starts showing you that the buyers are stepping in at the lows at a certain point where it's just like, that's too cheap, just got to pick it up there, right? And so that's where you start looking for those signs of accumulation. And then when it clears the breakout, the overhead resistance on big volume, that's a pretty good breakout there. So that's what I'm going to be looking for when I look for accumulation. There's some other things you can look at, some momentum indicators, and obviously the MACD and RSI when you start seeing some bullish divergence and other things like that forming. But it's looking pretty good. When is the book coming out? So it's going to be out later because I'm working on a webinar course and some video courses, because I know you guys prefer that over reading. And so video is kind of the first priority, but it's going to be happening in tandem, right? So the video course, there'll be a book version. But what I am going to do in the book, which you guys will like, is going to be the playbook. I'm going to kind of share some of the setups that I look for, the indicator setups, the best chart patterns for crypto, that sort of stuff. So, but unfortunately, you're going to have to wait a little bit. Okay, let me get through a couple more of these. So we did ICX, we did Monero. Let's do Monero. So looking at Monero, so let me go to the daily first. This is Monero BTC. I was really liking this. You guys know I was talking about Monero. I had that breakout, and I know it was the whole fork thing, and I didn't think that was going to really be much of an event, and it looks like it's really sold off after that. And just, this is just not as strong as it was here. I mean, it was one of the better names that held up the most versus BTC. And you know what's interesting, and I still like Monero long term. I think it's one of the better privacy coins. But you've seen this in the past where some of these names were kind of like the port in the storm, if you will, where they hold up, and then when the market starts cycling into a little bit more riskier alts, or the names that have been really bid up, then the names that were holding up the best, they kind of just start drifting lower. It's almost like you get rotation out of those. And I've seen that in the past year where we saw it with Litecoin for a while, when Litecoin was last year was kind of the port in the storm. And then once the hard fork passed, the whole Bcash hard fork, Litecoin just kind of drifted lower, and then all these other names just really started to rally. And you're seeing a similar effect here with some of these names. So Omisego, Monero, right? They were holding up well. Still not horrible in the long term, right? I mean, it's just kind of not as doing well as some of the other names. And so far, this moving average is drifting lower. It's going to be in a place of resistance. So I'd be watching that and just waiting for this thing to bottom out. It's not quite there yet. Monero USD though. Got Monero USD on Polo. I don't watch this. This 180 to 200 mark. See if it holds there on Monero. All right. Let's see here. What are some of these other names you guys want to talk about here? Salt. Oh man, Salt was having a move yesterday. I was looking today. I haven't looked at that one here. Salt still not looking too bad here. Look at the volume that came in on this one off the lows. Oops. Let me but Salt, that's accumulation, my friends. When you see the big pullback at the lows, just tons of volume starts coming in here. That's accumulation. That's buyers stepping in at the lows. That's not sellers. I promise you that's not all sellers showing up there. And so Salt's looking very good here at the lows. Looks like it finally wants to break this long-term downtrend. Let's see if it sticks. Found some near-term resistance at that declining 26 EMA, which also happened back here, and then we saw another leg down. But the thing that I like here is the fact that it was just so oversold, and the big buyers started stepping in at that point after the big pullback. And so Salt's looking pretty good. Now let's zoom in and see the very short-term action here. So here's the hourlies just kind of marching along. And we saw some pretty wild action here, a little bit of a battle happening here near term. And so maybe it gives you a little secondary pullback, a little bit of a pause. But all in all, I'm liking this. And as long as it can maintain this relative trend here in the lower end, it's going to look pretty good. And what tends to happen is if it maintains this trend, what you tend to see is, and you kind of get the first dip to it, the second dip. And if it looks like it's in a hold, then the trajectory starts to accelerate a little bit. So that's what I'd be looking for. Over Salt. So pullback targets for Salt. That's what I'm looking at, this lower trend line, right? If it goes sideways, it gives you a secondary entry point there. If it breaks, then you switch to a fib analysis and you look for, where's the retracement level, right? Where does it go from here, here? And that's what I'd be looking at. Oh, we didn't do Storm. Let's do Storm because man, oh man. So full disclosure, I am not in Storm. Totally missed this one. So I was watching Storm back here. I was like, wow, this thing just came out of nowhere, right? And Storm last week gave us this massive, 50% move. And I was thinking, well, I missed it. Storm's gone. Totally lost sight of it. You can't lose sight of these, right? When they do this, they start to give you this little bit of a pullback. You just got to wait those out, but you got to keep an eye on those. And then when they start to break out, right, that's when you want to look at them, is when they break that trend line. And it gave you a few hours of notice. Boom, 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 and then out of nowhere, just going. So Storm, wow, very nice, very good move in a couple of days. It's only up 225%. So would I buy it here? I wouldn't, but you guys know me, right? I mean, that's my risk management. So it could go higher, absolutely, just like ICX did. I mean, it just could keep going, but I'm just not going to chase them now. At this point, you got to wait for another base, some sort of pause or pullback. But Storm, very nice. Where would I put my stops on this guy? Man, this is a tough one. When they're this stretched, look at this. This is 40%, or let me go this way. The moving average to the price, sorry, hold on, is 60% up, right? 60% above the 10 EMA. I mean, it's kind of hard to put a stop on something like this because it could pull back halfway and still be just fine. And so it just depends on your strategy. If you're doing a swing trade, then you just hold on to these things and you watch the lower time frames and you just keep the trend, right? That's how you play the you know, when they're going that crazy. So if you're doing more of a swing trade, that's what you're doing. If you're doing a quick trade, then I would just I would take profits into some of these explosive moves higher, and then just buy back at the dips. So, but when it's that accelerated on the 4 hour and the 12 hour, the daily, I mean, you got to really zoom in. And so here's a 30 minutes. That's going to probably be your best gauge for now. If you want to, you know, if I was in this, I would just be watching this this trend and maybe just moving the stop up along the way. But still going. Storm. Very nice. F is breaking out. Oh, man. Check it out. F. If F breaks out, that's it. It's official. The altcoin bull market has begun. That's all right. Let's see FBTC. It's not breaking out. I mean, it's trying to, but we've seen these moves here before. You got to watch that trend. At the end of the day, that's it. I mean, F has got to clear this here. That's got to be cleared before I'm going to get too excited about it. Right now, to me, it's still leaning bearish. He trolled you. Man, suckered into that one. The only reason I checked was because it was F. You guys would have said something like, Chain Coin's breaking out. I wouldn't have cared. All right. Isn't that the bullish divergence? Yes, it is. And I've been talking about F being oversold for a while. And I keep thinking it's done, but until it proves itself, it's not done. However, longer term, like if you just want to buy the blood, buy the value play, then this might not be a bad place to look at it. Okay, let's keep going. We can type PQX. So this is BTC pair on this guy here. You know, just you can see it's still kind of it's meandering its way lower, still living below these moving averages. Found a pretty decent low here near term, but at this point, it's been is a little bit of a bounce. I hate when those long wicks really blow up the charts there, but all it's been is a little bit of a bounce into that moving average here. You can see, and so excuse me. This is pretty good volume, even though this bar is red. You can see that there's a long wick there. It might be hard to see on my chart here, but there's a long wick trying to recover here on the daily. And so very similar to BTC there. If this decides to put in a good low here, then that's positive. But I'd be looking for some confirmation to the upside, breaking above this, you know, this first couple of days here, this last couple of days. Going to the 4-hour chart. Let me change my time. I just noticed that. Coinage is just not sticky. I always have to reload all my settings on this for some reason. But yeah, so there's a little bit of an equilibrium pattern forming here near term. You can see the higher lows starting to form here, the lower highs starting to form here. And so not too bad. Not too bad. Stratus. We've not done the Stratus. Let's see here. Pretty good here. Not a bad little potential bull flag forming off that first initial run. Could be offering a pretty good secondary entry point. So, hey, not too bad versus BTC. I'd be watching this guy here. How does it look on the daily chart? So long term, finally seeing some decent volume coming in at the lows here after this very long pullback. Man, I was watching Stratus USD prices. It was at the lows right over the weekend. We were like $3 or something. Stratus. Where is it here? Strat. Where's my Strat USD pair? Here's the Strat USD pair. I mean, at the lows, we were at 325. It was like, oh my goodness, Stratus, how low is it going to go? And that was, I mean, that was way off the highs. And I know you could probably say that about most coins, but you know, this thing had been at $22 and went all the way down to $3 after having that big rally off of $2, you know, late last year. So, you know, just all over the map here. But versus BTC, Not looking too bad here in the near term. Holding the moving average on the daily chart, so it's looking pretty positive. The buy volume has been good. This pullback's been relatively contained. And so if we can break above this trend line, it's all around looking pretty positive. So I'd be watching this. All right, let's see here. We have gone, well, I started late, so I'll give you guys some extra time because I was 3 minutes late. But let's see here. We've got an hour now. Let me go through some of the other names. I'm going to have to just start cherry picking a few names here. Let me check something here real quick. Hold on. Hold on. I promise this is not going to eat into your time here. Hold your horses. Radio silence. In the meantime, maybe we should go look at those other markets that I was going to tell you guys about. One sec here. Okay. I looked at what I wanted to look at. I was checking something here. Let me go through my list here. I thought I had some other names that I was potentially going to share with you guys. So we covered Cardano. We covered IOTA. No one asked for IOTA. The other one I've been watching here. So IOTA had a pretty good run. Was one of the first movers off the low. And I'm watching this as a potential, hey, maybe it's finally found support on the pullback. And so got to see some confirmation first. Can get above this. But IOTA, one to be watching here. Longer term, this was a pretty good low. And if you look at IOTA USD, it was a key psychological support zone right above that $1 mark. And IOTA $1 is a key price point just because that was basically the prior high here in this first run. And we had another run attempt here before the big breakout. And so now that we've pulled back, you can see this first low in Feb was around $1.19. And then we went lower here, just about $1.03. So this $1, this low $1 range is an area to be watching. In the big picture, certainly hasn't confirmed yet by really breaking out above the trend line, but it's really close. And so I'm watching this. The volume at the lows is pretty positive here. This pullback's been relatively contained, lower and lower volume on that pullback. And so you got to be watching this one. Keeping an eye on IOTA. Now, I know this one's a little bit controversial. Not everybody likes IOTA, and I get that. So, and I'll be fair. I don't have any IOTA. I don't own any IOTA, so I'm not shilling the IOTA here. But I'm watching it. My number one bag is Bcash. It was at one point, and man, I sold that sucker good. That was probably one of my better trades in December, to be honest with you. Bcash. Bcash made me a lot of moolah. All right, let me see here. I'm going through a couple more of these. Nano, yeah, let's do Nano. So looking at Nano. Looking at the Nano there, that's man, I was really liking this one. This one was setting up so nice, but it's just been so weak here recently, and got to be cautious with this one. I mean, it's pretty much a retrace. It was looking very strong off the lows. Everything here about the lows was positive. The volume that came in, everything was looking good. Gave you a little bit of a secondary pause. Looked like it was about to break out, and then it just has rolled over completely. I know there was a lot of hype around this, and so maybe that's part of it, and some of the excitement leading into this. But at this point, I'm just cautious. Longer term, I think it's pretty interesting. Actually, the project itself, I like, but this chart right now, I just got to wait for this downtrend to be done and find a low somewhere. It looks like it's trying here. You're starting to see some long wicks come in as it tries to sell off. You're getting a little bit of support. We zoom in a little bit here on the 4 hour. It's looking a lot more positive here in the shorter term time frames. You can see the big green bars are starting to show up again. little bit of accumulation. So maybe this is the place where it wants to find a low and hold, but it's got to confirm by breaking out to the upside here. Hasn't seen that yet, but I like the project. It's just right now, near term, this is just not looking as strong as some of these other names. So Keybird, Nano, BNB, yeah, they're trying to do the good things there. ETH, yes, we covered the ETH. You almost forgot to hit the like button. Oh my goodness. Oh, let's do zero. We did 0x, but let's do DNT because I'm liking both here. So real quick, covering the 0x. We did 0x here. I'm liking this potential secondary entry point. Good rally off the lows. Looks like it's finally trying to break this downtrend. Now we need to see some confirmation. This is a project I really like. I think from a valuation perspective, it's good that it's come in this much. If you look at 0x, it's still up there, but not like where it was before. $300 million, still kind of high in my opinion, but not like back here where 0x was over $1 billion. And so I like it a lot more here at this level. Another one was DNT. Now this one fully retraced, and so this was a good trade here last year. I mean, where's the market cap here? Picking it up at the $20 million market cap range or so. Had that rally up to 200 million, over 200 million, and found a low here recently back at 20 million. And so potential a good longer term name to look at here. So let's go to DNT. And again, you can see some potential accumulation showing up here. A lot of volume starting to show up. Now, it hasn't turned the corner yet, but this one is on my radar again, looking like it maybe wants to turn the corner. You can see here, this is the hourlies over the last couple of days. You see these big spikes, and this is a lower volume name. You look at something like this, right? It only trades $1.5 million USD daily, and so that's relatively low volume for this, and you can see it in the chart. Right, when you get these big volume spikes come in, look at how it just moves the price. You get these wicks, and so it's not as liquid as some of these other names, but it's not too bad here. I like it. But most of those names that are in the 20 million, 40 million, they're going to look like that. They're just not very liquid. So we looked at Quantum. I'm really liking Quantum here. Pretty good secondary entry point. Let's do sub. Haven't looked at sub. I'll do a few more, guys, and then we'll cover some other things here. We'll look at the BTC. Is there a good way to do TA on coin market cap? You know, you can from a broader perspective, not at this level, right? Like moving averages and all that fun stuff. Not yet. There are some crypto indexes coming, but not yet. And honestly, that's all I look at it for, right? It's just kind of the broader perspective, right? Just to get a sense for the overall trend. But I don't do a whole lot of TA on, on this data here, right? I mean, it's just, you get a good sense for kind of some support levels, something like that. But that's really it. I don't get too in depth there. So looking at the substratum, what I don't like, granted, it's not a big red bar, but this big reversal here. So you had the big run, and you saw a lot of selling volume coming in. Obviously, that's started to create a little bit of a pullback. And so it's given up quite a bit here on this rally. So, I mean, it was kind of one of the early movers, but it doesn't look like it in this chart. But, man, look at that. That was a 80-90% move peak to peak. And it's pretty much given most of that up here off the lows. So real interesting to see there. A 4-hour chart. Let me go to the 4-hour. I mean, that's maybe it's found support here. It's kind of try to put in a higher low, but I'm not convinced just yet. I got to see this thing really start to turn the corner here. All right, here. I'm going to have to do a few more. Let's see. Somebody's been asking for PIVX by the privacy name. Let's see how the PIVX is looking. Then we go to PIVX. Bittrex got a lot more history there. So, man, PIVX was looking so good back here, too. It looks like it was, look at this breakout attempt. Just a failed breakout, man. Had that nice setup, cleared, and then just reversed and failed breakout and just totally given up. And that's usually a negative sign when you see a big failed breakout. And so far, just hasn't been able to really reverse that downtrend here on this chart. So looking at that on PIVX, I think it's hit a pretty good low near term. I mean, it's just got really oversold, but until it clears, at least this moving average, you got to be cautious with PIVX here. Speaking of PIVX, let's go to Dash. But Dash USD, something to note here on Dash, very similar to what I mentioned on the Bitcoin Cash side of things, is this prior high on Dash was around 400, and then we saw that big pullback late last year or middle last year, and it finally broke out from that downtrend line. That was your early signal to get in, right? And I was talking about this in my videos late last year, was Dash, and it broke out, and then it gave you this massive breakout above 400, and that just really kicked off the big run. And then since then, right, we peaked out at Dash 1500. Since then, it's just been really trashed. Dash was trashed and came all the way back down to $400 range, but it's right back to this key support level. And so this is a place to start paying attention to Dash again to see if it can reverse trend, because holding support there, kind of holding support here around this $400 mark, which is the prior high. And if this is going to reverse, this is ideally where it's going to start to bounce from and turn the corner. And so I'd be watching Dash here, keeping an eye on this pattern on Dash versus BTC. Just still not pretty, right? Just kind of all over the place here. But if that USD pair can find support there off $400 and start to take off, then that'll translate into potential outperformance on BTC side. Walton. Look at the Walton. So let's see here. Kind of back at the breakout point here. This is really the breakout point, so it could go a little bit lower. This was really the big support resistance area that got cleared that started this nice little rally, and so far it's kind of pulling back. I thought that was the low down here. That was mostly news driven, and it was just kind of big pop, one day thing, failed. And so that was a whole partnership with Alibaba, subsidiary type of thing. But let's see how far back this has taken us on the retracement levels. So if you look at this here, we just broke below the 618 level. If you go from that point, if you go from the lowest point, we're just right below 618. So it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. There's really not a lot of support going in here. So you can argue maybe this is your support that you're seeing right now. That's just a one-day bar, so I'm not so sure that's going to be a whole lot to go off of. This is going to be a much stronger base, and if this breaks lower, then you're looking at another potential 30-40%. I'd just be watching this downtrend, waiting for that to clear. PPT. All right, we'll do PPT. Let's take a look at that. So I know this was a big favorite here recently and was kind of headed to the moon, but really gave up a lot. But the good news, here's the good news, right, is seeing this now. Let me change the colors here. Let me lock my, right, so seeing that there, right, we saw one back here, even though that was near the highs. And, the RSI is just kind of starting to maybe tick up here a little bit. So it looks like it's found a pretty good low here. If you like it, this might not be a bad place to look at it. And your stop level is pretty well defined. Right? You got a pretty good support level that's been formed here over the last week or so. And looks like it wants to hold, but the downtrend's not there yet. This is step one, right? You got the downtrend, and now it's maybe forming a little bit of a base. And if it starts to really move higher and clear at least these next moving averages, then maybe it's done and starts to resume another uptrend. So PBT. What's the market cap on this guy? Isn't it still up there quite a bit? Yeah, it is. It's almost 600 million. So still way up there, in my opinion. It's come down quite a bit, but It was only at $2.6 billion in early February. It's a lot. It's a lot. Aeon. Cliff High is all about PPT. I know. And a few others. And I don't get that whole linguistic analysis thing. So Aeon, a little bit smaller cap here volume wise. You can see that the little wicks here up and down kind of reveal that on the charts, but I like this big move off the low with big volume. Now this one way up here, it was just crazy. I remember that one day it was like, where did that come from? But then it just really gave that up. But you're seeing another wick here, so it's really finding some good support here. You can see the patterns really starting to turn the corner. And in the very short term, if you zoom in, the level that I would be watching here is, let me go to the hourly, sorry. You know, just seeing if this holds. And there's not much of a trend there. It's just still, it's still really giving it up here. So you just got to watch this downtrend on these pullbacks. All right. Alts season starting in 30 seconds. Well, there's only one way to confirm that, and that's by looking at Ethereum. Just kidding. Neo, BNB. Let's go through some of the names that we saw at the beginning. So Bitcoin, not looking too shabby here. This bar has 1 hour left to go, and it is very possible that this is going to turn into a nice green hammer if it continues this way. And so let's see if we can follow through here. BTC closes above 8,700 or so. That's going to be very positive. It's going to help clear some of the resistance that we've seen here over the last day. It'll change the picture here on this pullback that we saw here for a couple of days, get us back above this moving average, turn green. That would be nice. So there's the 1 hour. How's it look on the 4 hour chart? Still got to see some more buy volume here. We've seen mostly selling here. This was a good start, and for most of the day, it's just kind of been sitting tight here. But the alts is what's keeping me a little bit more positive. Binance, we covered that. Still looking pretty strong. I covered Zcash, looking pretty good. A couple of few of these others. EOS, if you joined late, potential breakout on EOS that I'm watching. Watch this lower trend line. Watch this upper here. Let me go to the 1 hour, show you a little bit more granularity. EOS. And a few others here. I think that was it. Okay. Yeah, and Very is up 80%. All right. Vertcoin. Let me do Vert real quick. I haven't looked at Vertcoin in a bit, and I'm going to cover some of the other stuff I wanted to cover that I made you guys wait for you non-crypto folks. So Vert. Yeah, and just so you guys know, yeah, EOS June 1st, the whole coin changeover and all that fun stuff. So keep an eye on that. Let's see here. Vert. I don't know. I know you guys really liked Vert. It was just really hard for me to get excited about this. Other than some quick trading, I'm not in Vert long term. But I don't know about this one bar here. Yes, I did. OMG, guys. Thanks for all the feedback. I really appreciate that, guys. So looking at Vert, I mean, it's trying to hold a little bit of a trend line, maybe. It's still trending higher, but what I don't like is this. Right at the highs, big volume reversal. You know, just, I mean, it was looking pretty good here, but just a lot of profit taken here as it goes higher. So I'm betting there's still quite a few VTC bag holders from the days up here when it was supposed to go to $20 or whatever they were saying, but still has some supply overhead to work out, in my opinion. Okay. Yeah, I like the alts. You guys know I'm not, you know, there's times where I'm heavy BTC, right? Like, honestly, I've been heavy BTC for most of the last 2 months. You know, I always hold some alts, to some percent. But as far as my crypto portfolio, the part that's invested has been largely bigger cap names. But in recent weeks, that's really started to shift because I think they found a low, and we're seeing some evidence of that. And so now I'm kind of moving out of being so heavy, the bigger cap names, and going more into some of these other small names that are just looking really good. Tron, how's Tron doing here? Good old Tron. Finally pausing after having a little bit of a run, but it needed to pause, man. Look how extended it was on that 1 hour. The level to look at on Tron, full disclosure, I'm still riding the Tron wave, but the level to look at on Tron here, this right here. So had the breakout point, good volume came in. Maybe we pause and find some support in and around this zone right here. And so that's what I'd be watching on Tron over the next couple of hours. But the daily chart and all that fun stuff still looks strong, still looks like it wants to keep going. So just get a hold. I'm just get a hold. Okay, so I talked stocks at the beginning of this segment, and primarily I wanted to point out the big double top that we're seeing with the big bearish divergence on so many levels. Now, I think they're a little bit overdone near term. We're probably going to see a bounce on Monday or Tuesday and all that fun stuff. But the big picture, I'm still pretty negative on stocks. I do have some short positions and all that fun stuff. But look at the weekly charts. Same thing. Big bearish divergence. On the weekly, that's a big ugly break. And so the same methodology applies, right? I mean, big volume reversal off the top. You don't like to see that. Pretty weak bounce. Boom. Break again on big volume. That's very toppy action, ladies and gentlemen. And so you got to keep an eye on that. And just so many patterns have that same look here. So that's the stock market. The metals market. So here's what I was looking at here on the metal side. Big picture on, and so with stocks and with some of these other markets, it certainly helps to look at the daily and the weekly charts, right? I'm not doing the 4 hour, the 1 hour in those markets because the percent moves are a lot smaller, right? In cryptos, I mean, a 1 hour bar could take you up 10%, 20%, right? I mean, we've seen it, right? 10% moves is nothing in crypto. In the stock market, obviously, that's a huge move. And so you got to factor that in, which is why these longer term timeframes make sense. So that being said, the weekly chart of gold, look at this. We are about to break out here. It's been building up pressure here for the last 2 years under this level, more like a year and a half, but still. After this big run we had, the big pullback, and right now we're just kind of building a new base there. And so you got to pay attention to that. For those of you that are interested, I know not everyone's trading other markets besides crypto. I'm watching that. I'm watching this trend line in silver. And so the way I tend to play these is rather than buying the commodity directly, I'll buy some sort of leveraged instrument, whether it's an option or something like that, or I'll buy some of the mining shares because they tend to outperform when the metal performs. And so some of these names I'm looking at, the GDX, the GDXJ, if you're really brave, you buy leverage stuff. And so that's metals. I'm watching it potentially breaking out here. Wheat and precious metals looking pretty good. So a lot of these mining stocks, shares, these precious metals, here's platinum. They're looking pretty decent. They're setting up. So I'm liking the way the chart patterns are setting up on a lot of those. And I'm not liking the way the stocks are. Well, I kind of am, but that's only because I'm betting on this happening. So this is, but this is usually not good news for the all around economy. So, but I'm hedged. All right, guys, I think that's it, man. Let's see here. You traded about 10% platinum at BT16K. Wasn't a bad move. I did something similar. Not a bad move. Yeah, at one point the gold to BTC ratio was like 15. It was like, oh my goodness. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was an hour and a half. It felt like 30 minutes. I try to go fast. I try to cover as much as I could in the spend that I had. And I appreciate everybody hanging with me, sitting tight. It's going to be a very interesting weekend. BTC sitting tight. Watch those levels that I've been watching there. And I'm not sure if I'm going to do a video over the weekend. Good chance I probably will, but it's just going to depend on what we do here over the next couple of days. But going into the next hour, there's 1 hour left on this bar. Even if it doesn't close green, if it can close looking something like this, right, creating a little bit of a hammer bar, that shows some pretty good support on this pullback. And then we're going to be watching into Saturday, Sunday. Do we get some green on the upside, getting above that elusive $9,200 level? That's going to really change the picture. On the bear side, yes, there's a potential head and shoulders forming here. So if we do one of these, that's no bueno. But $9,200 is really the kind of the strong level to watch near term. 8,800 or so is what I'd be watching. If we break lower, 8K, that's going to be the level I want to see this thing hold. Much below that, then that's not going to look too good all around. And the strong alts that are popping right now may begin to pull in if BTC gets much lower than 8K. So those are the numbers to watch over the next couple of days. Thanks for being here, guys. Till next time, take care, everyone.